Okay, as I was saying, before we start comparing the homework from last week, I want to emphasize something that I maybe did not emphasize last time. You guys remember this question? Really long statement that ends up being just one sentence, right? These 4 lines just mean that cigarette companies have stopped insisting that smoking does not cause illness. This question is different from most of the other questions we talked about last week because this sentence, this very long and complicated sentence, this terribly written sentence, was written like this intentionally. Somebody decided to write a very long and complicated sentence to express this very simple idea. And the reason that they chose to do this is to hide this information. The person who wrote this sentence probably works for a cigarette company. They did not want the reader to understand the sentence. Maybe it was required by law, either like a health regulation or the result of a lawsuit or some regulation about truthful advertising. Whatever the reason, the cigarette company was forced to write that they no longer say that there's no connection between smoking and illness, but they didn't want readers to understand that. So they decided to write this message in a very complicated, hard to understand way. And this really gets at why it's important to understand what is good writing, what is not good writing, what is easy to understand and what is not easy to understand. It's not just about communicating clearly. It's also about knowing when somebody doesn't want you to understand. There was a movie like 10 or 12 years ago called Dark Waters. It was about what do you call those? CFC toxins, like the non-stick pans, 不粘锅, right? They put a layer of chemicals on the pans so that the food doesn't stick to the pan. Turns out a lot of those chemicals are poisonous. And the companies that make those chemicals try to hide the fact that they're poisonous for a long time. There's a scene in the movie where somebody gets a letter from the water company and they don't quite understand the letter. It seems like the letter is saying nothing. It says something like, um, uh, because you are a loyal customer, we have decided to give you a discount after like a routine check of the water found something something. And then the point of the letter seemed to be information that the consumer did not need to know. But really what it was doing was it was satisfying a legal requirement. A court of law required the water company to notify its users if the water had some kind of chemical in it. So like hidden inside this letter is a very grammatically complicated sentence that basically said, we found this chemical in your water. But the water company did not want people to understand that, so they wrote the letter in a very confusing way. Style isn't just about writing well, it's also about knowing when somebody's trying to trick you. So this is a good example of that. Lots of really big companies do this a lot, especially if they're American companies. Water company, cigarette companies, oil companies like to do this when you talk to them about global warming. They'll say lots of really good sounding things that actually just tell you they're not really doing anything. Okay, so the answers to this week's homework, or I should say last week's homework. Again, the original, this is from page 34. The original question is in italics. And then the first answer is simply correcting the grammar and the later answers are improving the sentence. So let's look at page 34, question 1. If we invest our sweat in these projects, we must avoid appearing to work only because, oh, sorry, these are not correcting the grammar yet. These are all improving the sentence. So the question asked us to improve the sentence and then give a strong ending. Well, the first sentence doesn't really need to be improved. It's short, it's simple, not hard to understand. So let's just give it a stronger ending. My first answer is from to work to be working, because it is an appearance. When somebody sees something, it is more of a static situation. It's not something you expect to happen. So instead of using an infinitive, we can use a gerund. And then only because we are interested in ourselves. Pretty weak ending, right? In ourselves. It's a preposition followed by a pronoun. Let's see if we can end this sentence on a more concrete word. Interested in ourselves. So that's self-interest. Instead of because, which is 2 syllables, very weak. Because is the kind of thing you expect to start a long explanation. So instead you can use for. For is a preposition that tells you a purpose. So instead of to work only because we're interested in ourselves, you can say to be working only for our own self-interest. And it's shorter, it uses more concrete nouns, and so it sounds stronger. But we can still improve this sentence. We can take out a little bit of filler, 就是没有意义的填充词. So invest our sweat in. Doesn't that just mean sweat as a verb? Invest our sweat in just means we sweat for these projects. We must avoid appearing. Well, it says invest our sweat in. This just means working. These two are the same idea. So we can replace the second verb with do so, which just means the same verb as the first half. I think we mentioned last semester, the word do can replace the verb of a sentence if the reader already knows what verb it should be. And then so is the rest of that sentence, right? So we replace the verb sweat with do, and we replace for these projects with so. So do so just means sweat for these projects. And then for our own self-interest. Okay, so self and own are the same thing, right? Ours, ourself. So, and then also our. These three words mean the same thing. So only for self-interest. But that makes the sentence end weaker. To be working only for self-interest. It doesn't have that build, 没有一个堆砌感. So we can add a few words that are not empty, but that can like draw it out a little bit more, give it more power. So we change for to out of. It's one more weak syllable. And then you really want to emphasize the idea of self-interest. So you can add alone. Alone just means only. But only is a weak word. Only. You want a strong word. Alone. And so that way we can end the sentence stronger. Compare. We must avoid appearing to be working only for our own self-interest. We must avoid appearing to do so out of self-interest alone. Can you hear that the second sentence is slightly stronger? Okay, yeah, that's something you can practice listening to. Questions about this one? All right, next one. The plan for the political campaign was concocted. Concocted just means made up by those who were not sensitive to what we needed most critically. If we want to make the sentence stronger, we can immediately find a noun out of this phrase. What we needed most critically just means our most critical needs. And that way you can end on a noun instead of an adverb. Ending on a noun sounds stronger. And then you can also improve this sentence slightly by changing not sensitive to insensitive. So that's the easiest change to give us a stronger sentence. But we can improve this sentence even more. The plan for the political campaign was concocted. Concocted means made up. To make up a plan just means to plan as a verb. So you can just say the political campaign was planned by those, and then you can omit who were, right? We talked about if it's a relative clause with a be verb, you can omit both words. So by those insensitive to our most critical needs. But we can do a little bit better. Was planned by somebody. Well, why don't we use that person as the subject? The planners of the political campaign were insensitive to our critical needs. You don't really need to say most critical. Critical already means very important. So in this case, the last sentence is the most concise, simplest sentence. But in fact, this sentence sounds better. It sounds a little stronger. Let me read it to you. You can compare. The political campaign was planned by those insensitive to our most critical needs. Versus, the planners of the political campaign were insensitive to our critical needs. I hope you can hear that the second to last sentence, it draws out the ending a little bit longer, so there's like a crescendo effect. 有一种高潮的感觉. So when you hit the top, it sounds the most powerful. Questions about this one? So yes, sometimes you should add words that are slightly longer, but you should not use words that are meaningless. Or you should try to avoid words that are meaningless. You can use longer versions of words that have meaning. I often say, we have a word called simultaneous, which just means at the same time. At the same time is 4 words, but it's shorter in terms of syllables, right? At the same time, 4 syllables. Simultaneous, 5 syllables. So why do we use a long word with more syllables if we have a shorter version that has fewer syllables and is easier to understand? Because sometimes we need something that's longer. We need something to draw out the sentence, to give it a sense of rhythm and a sense of progress. So there really is, in English, there is no good word or bad word. It depends on what you're trying to do in your sentence. Question 3. Throughout history, science has made progress because dedicated scientists have ignored a hostile public that is uninformed. Okay, so we can find a concrete noun from this last part, right? A hostile public that is uninformed. We already have the noun, it's public. Public means everybody. So we have to find a way to move this in front so that we can end the sentence with public. Well, the easiest way is a hostile and uninformed public. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. This answer is from the textbook. The textbook has answers suggested answers for half of the questions. So this is what the author recommends. Science has made progress now becomes science has progressed, which is a bit better. And then a hostile public that is uninformed is now the hostility of an uninformed public. That does sound pretty good. Listen, dedicated scientists have ignored a hostile public that is uninformed. It feels like you're going down the stairway. But what you really want is to climb to the top of the stairway and then jump. Dedicated scientists have ignored the hostility of an uninformed public. A bit better. But I think my version is still the best. Dedicated scientists ignored a hostile and uninformed public. You really get that jump in there. But this is not the simplest sentence. If you look at the previous one, this one is shorter by one word. This is an interesting thing to talk about. In terms of logic, a hostile public that is uninformed, it means that these people don't have the correct information, and therefore they are angry at science because they don't understand science. Hostile and uninformed are not parallel. They are uninformed. They are hostile because they are uninformed. There's only one direction. Sorry, Harry Styles fans, but there's only one direction this sentence has meaning. So the correct logic is a hostilely uninformed public. They are hostile because they are uninformed. So this sentence is actually the shortest sentence. But in English, there is a common strategy to avoid ugly adverbs. If you have an adverb plus an adjective and it looks very ugly or it sounds very ugly, like hostilely, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth. It's a very ugly word. So instead of using an adverb plus an adjective, you can change it into an adjective and an adjective. These two things mean the same thing. Hostile and uninformed just means hostilely uninformed. But it sounds better. And then finally, the first part of the sentence can also be improved. If science has progressed, you are already talking about history. You're talking about the past, right? Where else could science have progressed? It must be in the past. So you can take out throughout history. That's unnecessary. And instead, you can, okay, so like has progressed means in the past. Throughout history means not just once, not just twice, but all the time. So in fact, you can just turn this into always. Science has always progressed. You don't really need to repeat the have. Once you have the first perfect aspect, the reader kind of knows that the rest of the sentence is in the same aspect, same tense. So you don't have to repeat that. So you can simply scientists ignored. It looks like the simple past tense, but it's really an implied past perfect, or sorry, present perfect. Okay, questions about this one? Lots of interesting things going on in this one. Okay, number 4. Not one tendency in our governmental system has brought about more changes in American daily life than federal governmental agencies that are very powerful. That's a lot of words. To me, it already sounds like there are too many words here. So not one tendency just means no tendency. Governmental system just means government. Is there a difference between governmental system and government? It depends on the context. A government could mean the specific administration, 某人执政时期, but here it just means the government, the entire system. So the meaning is the same. Has brought about more changes. You can turn this countable noun into an uncountable noun, more change. You don't need the about. So like the simpler answer is brought more changes. But you can say brought more change as well. If you don't have about, then you, instead of bring about in, you say bring to. American daily life. First of all, to me, it sounds like it should be daily American life. But that's the small problem. The bigger problem is if you don't have the word daily, does that really change anything? American daily life, American life? No, it's the same thing. So American life or American lives, both are fine. Uh, Federal governmental agencies that are very powerful just means, okay, so first of all, federal. Federal means the federal government, 联邦政府. So federal governmental is repeating, it's unnecessary. If you have federal, you don't need governmental. So federal agencies that are very powerful, we can make that sound stronger, right? We end with a noun. Federal agencies that are very powerful just means powerful federal agencies. And then if you want to simplify that even more, if you say American lives in the sentence, then you don't need to say our government. The reader knows you're talking about the American government. And then to really end on a strong note, instead of saying just powerful federal agencies, in poetry we call this anapestic. Bum 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 bum. It's going down. We can interrupt this rhythm by changing powerful to power of. The power of federal agencies. Instead of just 3 words following the same rhythm, we now have 4 words, and the beginning disrupts that rhythm. Sounds slightly better. Although if you really want to find a way to make this sentence sound powerful, I would simply rewrite the sentence. The ideas available to us in this sentence do not allow for a really powerful ending. But this is like the best I could do. I don't know, maybe if you have a better answer. Questions? Okay, if you're interested, anapestic in Chinese is 扬意一格. It's a meter in poetry. 是诗的格律之一. Question 5. The day is gone when school systems, boards of education have the expectation, already I can tell you, have the expectation should be changed, that local taxpayers will automatically go along with whatever extravagant things incompetent bureaucrats decide to do. Okay, so the day is gone when blah, 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 blah means that these people can no longer have the expectation that means expect that. Use a verb instead of a noun. Local taxpayers. Okay, we can say that this is in contrast to national taxpayers. So we're talking about local government versus the national government. But like, do you really expect the national government to be talking about the budgets of individual schools? I think it already makes sense that when you say taxpayers in this context, you're already talking about local taxpayers. So we can take out the local, just taxpayers. Automatically go along with just means go along with. What does it mean to not automatically go along with? I don't think that makes sense. So just go along with. Whatever extravagant things incompetent bureaucrats decide to do, whatever someone decides to do, whatever idea they have. So the extravagant ideas of incompetent bureaucrats. And it ends on a concrete noun instead of a vague replacement verb. So that gives us a slightly stronger ending. And this is where we have to talk about context. As you know, because I just told you, or at least I just reminded you, the US uses a federal system, which means that the central government or the federal government only has power where local governments give it power. The focus is on local governments. And if local governments decide, oh, we think that a higher level of government should take care of this, only then does the higher level of government have power to control that. So in the US, education is a local government issue. A board of education is a local governmental agency or institution that makes rules for each local school district. So if you know that this is the American context, you definitely don't need the word local. So now that you know it's definitely a local issue, we can improve this sentence a little bit more. Expect that taxpayers will go along with, you can just change that to support. Extravagant ideas, you can use one noun, extravagancies. An extravagancy is something that is extravagant. Extravagant means wasting a lot of money. So an extravagancy is something that wastes a lot of money. So now the ending becomes that taxpayers will support the extravagancies of incompetent bureaucrats. This is the most concise version. This is the shortest version. But if you want power in this sentence, starting with no longer, right? When it says the day is gone, starting with a denial or like it is over, that kind of idea, does make the sentence stronger. It makes the reader look forward to what is no longer true. No longer can. Okay, so what are you saying we can no longer do? So the strongest version of this sentence is probably, no longer can boards of education expect taxpayers to support the extravagancies of incompetent bureaucrats. We have made one more change. Expect that will just means expect to. I expect that you will just means I expect you to do something. Okay, questions about this one? All right. So those are the 5 questions on page 34. Any other ideas, feedback, questions? Okay, if not, let's go to page 35. This page gives you a story. All the sentences are correct, but the story doesn't flow. It's very choppy. I guess in Chinese, it would be something like 就是节奏很不顺畅. So how can we make this story flow smoother? There are, of course, many, many different answers. Here's my answer. Darla fainted. Very strong opening. Simple sentence, very clear what's going on, and it's a dangerous situation. It grips your attention, so let's keep that. You already said Darla, you can change this to she. Lying on the floor in a heap, you can use heap as a verb. She was heaped on the floor. You can combine this sentence with the previous sentence. With her legs bent under her. Again, the subject is she, so you can combine this sentence into the previous sentence. Breathe is a very weak word. You can use pant as a verb, and it's more vivid. Pant just means to breathe quickly. With the legs bent under her, panting rapidly. Right? Breathed in quick pants at a rapid rate just means panting rapidly. I chose rapid instead of quick because it sounds better. Right? Listen. Panting quickly versus panting rapidly. Rapidly has one more syllable. It moves faster. It gives you a sense of speed, which is what the sentence is talking about. Then you have the next character, Henry. Henry came. He ran as fast as he could. We can combine these two sentences, right? Henry came does not really add a lot of information. Henry ran to her, came as fast as he could. And then he neared Darla and gasped. My angel, he said. We can put these two together. My angel, he gasped as he neared her. So we move the quote to the front because, again, it's more evocative. It grabs your attention. We already know that he's running toward Darla. We expect that he's going nearer and nearer Darla. That's not important information. You need to say it to complete the scene, but it shouldn't be the focus. The focus should be the new information, which is he calls her my angel. He gasped as he neared her. His heart was beating. His cardiologist, heart doctor, would be worried about the fast rate. Again, these two sentences are connected. They're both about the heart, so we can put them together. His heart was beating so fast that his cardiologist would have been worried. You'll notice we also changed would be to would have been. This is more correct because his cardiologist does not know about his heart. So we should use the version of conditional where it's not true and it cannot be changed. So, and that is would have been. Henry did not care. We already know his name. You can put did not together. So he didn't care. Again, we already know his name. He cared only about Darla. You might think, wait, these two sentences could be combined, right? But like it looks like they're similar. He cares about Darla more than his heart. You could put it together. But in terms of storytelling, these two sentences are shifting focus. They're shifting the focus from his heart to Darla. So it looks like they're similar, but it's actually going in opposite directions. So I think we should keep these two short sentences. He didn't care. He cared only about Darla. She was the love of his life. I didn't change that. Again, short, simple, strong sentence. She was the love of his life. She was unconscious. This is the last in the series of short sentences, so I simply added and she was unconscious. I previously mentioned that you can start a sentence with and, but usually you only do this when you have a series of sentences and each sentence feels like part of a list. And so the last sentence would be the last item on the list. So you add and in front to tell the reader this is the last item. That's what's going on here. These are all short sentences and the and tells the reader this is the last short sentence. Let me read it to you. Cardiologist would have been worried. He didn't care. He cared only about Darla. She was the love of his life, and she was unconscious. You get that sense where we shift the focus from not caring about his heart and then shifting it onto Darla. The next sentence is also about how he loves Darla, how important she is to him. And then the last sentence brings us back to reality, which is that Darla has fainted. So again, even though and looks like it's going in the same direction, it's actually a twist. It's a minor twist. the previous two sentences are positive, and then this sentence is negative, right? He cares about Darla. She was the love of his life. These are both very happy sentences. And then this last sentence is a very unhappy sentence. He said, Angel Pie, you don't have to pawn your engagement ring. Starting again, I think we talked about this when we did the lesson on direct quotations. We don't really start the sentence with the speech tag because it's very weak. It doesn't give the reader very important information. So what is the most important information here? Well, we just talked about how Henry loves Darla so much. So I think the most important information is the emotional information. Angel Pie, calling her Angel Pie. Again, showing how much he loves her. And then we can add the speech tag in the middle. We can also add his movements. He knelt next to her in the middle. Angel Pie, he said, kneeling next to her. You don't have to pawn your engagement ring. Pawn means to temporarily sell for money. Maybe you can buy it back later. 典当. So that's my version. You want me to read it to you? You can feel the rhythm. Darla fainted. She was heaped on the floor with her legs bent under her, panting rapidly. Henry ran to her as fast as he could. My angel, he gasped as he neared her. His heart was beating so fast that his cardiologist would have been worried. He didn't care. He cared only about Darla. She was the love of his life, and she was unconscious. Angel Pie, he said, kneeling next to her. You don't have to pawn your engagement ring. It really has that smoothly flowing rhythm. The sentences are connected. It's a really big improvement on the original collection of short, unconnected sentences. Questions? All right, page 36. So these are the sentences that have grammar problems. So the first answer here is the version that simply corrects the grammar, nothing else. And then if there are more answers, these will be improving the sentence. So the first one, we went shopping after ate dinner. This should be after eating dinner. But the stores were closed. I think there's no reason to separate the sentences. So let's put them together. But the stores were closed. We had to go back home. Again, we can connect the sentences. So there's a cause effect, right? Closed, therefore we had to go back home or just go home. This should be even though. We hadn't found what, and then what were we? This should be what we were looking for. You can't just say even. Even in Chinese is 甚至. It's emphasis. Because in Chinese we say 虽然 or 即使. But in English there are two versions. Even if and even though. In Chinese we translate both of them as the same. But even if does not mean 即使. Even if just means if. It's a stronger version of if. It's something that has not happened yet. If it has already happened, you say even though. So you can't just say even. I know some people do that when they say Chinese, right? Instead of saying 即使, they say even. That's not English, that's Chinese. But we can make this a much better sentence. We went shopping after eating dinner. First, give us the scene. After dinner, we went shopping. This is a better sentence because dinner happens first, and so we put dinner in the front of the sentence. Shopping happens next, so we put shopping in the second half of the sentence. Now, it's usually not a good idea to have so many connectors. So if we do have to break this into two sentences, I would break it here. There seems to be a stronger gap between these two sentences than between these two sentences. But the stores were closed. So instead of saying we had to go home even though we hadn't found what we were looking for, we can just say, so we went home empty-handed with nothing in our hands. And it's the same meaning. So you don't have to say we had to go home. You can just say you go home, you went home. Questions? All right, next one. I want to explain that I know a lot of grammar. Grammar is uncountable. English grammar is uncountable. If you say grammars plural, that means you know the grammar of many different languages. But here it's only talking about English, so it's uncountable. The next half is a new sentence, so we add the comma, but not is my problem, right? My problem is that I haven't enough is actually I don't have enough. And then again, vocabulary is uncountable for one language. Vocabulary means the collection of words, or sorry, a collection of words. And the boundary of that collection is determined by your context. Here, the context is words that the person knows. So again, if you say vocabularies plural, you're talking about more than one language. Each language, you have one vocabulary. It's not words, it's a collection of words. And then we can improve this sentence. I want to explain that I know a lot of grammar can just be, I want to show how good my grammar is. Right? The point isn't how much grammar, the point is how good it is. But my problem is I don't have enough vocabulary, just means my vocabulary is too small. We took out problem because the idea of problem is already part of the sentence. But and to. The first sentence is positive, right? Good grammar. So if you change directions, the next sentence must be negative. And why? What is the reason for being negative? Because too small. So this is a problem. The idea of problem is already in the sentence. You don't actually have to say that this is a problem. I'm pretty sure you would use the word problem, right? Because in Chinese you would say something like 问题是 blah blah blah. But really, if what you're saying is a problem, we know it's a problem even if you don't use the word problem. Okay, questions about this one? All right, number 3. When I got lost in the bus station, there should be a comma here, comma. A kind man helped me. He explained. This should be a new sentence, or you can use a participial construction, explaining. How to read the huge bus schedule on the wall. Again, you need a subject here. He took me to the window to buy a ticket and showed me not where was my bus, but where my bus was. I will always appreciate his kindness. And then we can improve this a little bit. You can say got lost, but really it doesn't really matter. The fact that this person started out not lost and then became lost is not really important for this sentence. So you can just say when I was lost in the bus station, a kind man helped me, and you can actually say he helped me by explaining. Explaining how to read the schedule just means explaining the schedule. In order to understand the schedule, you have to read the schedule. So learning how to read the schedule just means learning the schedule. You don't actually have to say how to read. And because you already have the by here, you can make the rest of this sentence a list by doing things. A, by explaining. B, by taking me to buy a ticket. And C, by showing me where my bus was. It makes the sentence structure much more straightforward. And parallel. Parallel helps you understand the sentence. He took me to the window to buy a ticket. Again, you don't really need to know where the ticket is. The point is to buy the ticket. So taking me to buy a ticket, you don't really need to say where it is. Okay, questions about this one? Number 4, I had never, this should be understood, right? Had understood. You need a noun, importance of, you also need a noun, knowing English. English is a language. English language, you're saying English language. So you don't need the word language. Until does not start a complete sentence, so we combine this with the previous sentence. Knowing English until I worked at a large international company. But we can improve this sentence slightly. You don't really have to emphasize that it was different in the past. You're already saying until. Until means something changed. So of course the first half is in the past. So you can just say I never understood. Until I worked at. That's not really the point, right? The point is the change, the moment where something changed. And that moment is when this person started working at a large international company. So we improve the sentence not by making it shorter, but by making the logic more precise. Questions? Number 5. By the way, this file is on Moodle. If you need to go back and review it, it's online. Number 5, since I was young, comma, my father found an American woman to teach me and my brothers English. Okay, so it's not since. It didn't start when the author was young and keep going. It was simply when the author was young. In my brother's English. But when this should be past tense, right? Moved to another town, comma, my father wasn't able to find another teacher for, you don't need this other, 5 years. So like after 5 years, they found a new teacher. You don't really need to say other 5 years. I don't even know what that means. Okay, other 5 years. So these 5 years compared to some other 5 years doesn't make sense. So just take out the other. And then we can improve this sentence by quite a bit, actually. American woman to teach me and my brothers English, but when we move to another town, usually people don't move a lot in the same town. If they're in the same city, maybe, but if it's a town, why would somebody move in the same town? So when we moved is enough. You already said my father, so you can just say he. Wasn't able to just means couldn't. Another teacher, you already know that he's looking for a teacher, so just a replacement for 5 years. Questions? Next one. Oh, let's take a short break. I didn't notice the time. When we come back, we'll finish these questions. Question 6. I was surprised to see the room that I was given at the dormitory is correct, but because cannot begin a new sentence. So this must be part of the previous sentence. Comma, because, and then it's the past tense, right? I was surprised, so there wasn't, because furniture is uncountable, so it should be wasn't any furniture. And this is missing something, because there wasn't any furniture. There's no way to make the word dirty parallel with that structure. So it should be there wasn't and it was dirty. That's the parallel structure. We can simplify the sentence. Surprised to see the room I was given at the dormitory just means, okay, the room that I was given at the dormitory just means my dormitory room. Right? I was surprised by my new dormitory room because instead of there wasn't any furniture and it was dirty, we can simplify, we can use a simpler parallel structure because it was dirty and lacked furniture. So instead of the empty subject there, you use dormitory as your subject. It was dirty. Wasn't any means there lacks, right? There's nothing, and lacked furniture. And then finally, you can simplify this even more. I was surprised by my new dormitory room just means my new dormitory room surprised me. It's one word shorter. Surprised me because so if your subject is the dorm and the second half subject is also the dorm, you can put them together. Surprised me by its noun, dirtiness, and noun, lack of furniture. Some of you get this wrong. Lack as a verb takes an object directly. If you add the word of, lack becomes a noun. Lack of furniture is a noun. Questions? All right, number 7. When I meet Mr. Lee for the first time, we played, past tense, so this should be met. When I met Mr. Lee for the first time, we played video games at the student center, even though we, again, past tense, couldn't communicate very well. But we had a good time. There's a problem with the connections. So the first sentence, blah, 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 we played video games. The second sentence, we couldn't communicate. The third sentence, we had a good time. How do we put these together? I think logically it makes more sense to separate the two sentences here. So the first sentence, we played video games at the student center. And then the second sentence has two ideas. Couldn't communicate, had a good time anyway. I think there's not too much of a contradiction between these two sentences. You can just use and. And even though we couldn't communicate very well, we had a good time. Even though and but, you can only choose one. Even though or although or though, or you can say but. You cannot use both at the same time. So here I kept even though because there is a transition here, right? We played video games, positive. We couldn't communicate, negative. There's a switch. So I kept the even though. But since we do have the even though, you don't have to have but. And then again, we can improve this sentence. Met Mr. Lee for the first time just means when I first met Mr. Lee. And then we can combine their action and how they feel about their action. We had a good time playing video games at the student center. Video games today is one word. And then even though we couldn't communicate very well just means we could barely communicate. Questions?相信图文会打哈欠是因为他都听懂了。Number 8. Because the United States is a large and also big country. We can already take this out, right? A large country. Again, you cannot begin a sentence. You cannot have a complete sentence underneath because. So this must be the beginning of the actual sentence. So comma. It means that there various kinds of people live there. What does that even mean? Okay, what did I say? Because US is a large country, various kinds of people live there. So you can take out all of this garbage. I don't even know what that means. Various kinds of people live there, comma, and because this is a complete sentence and this is a complete sentence, so there has to be a comma here. And it has a diverse population. And then we can simplify this very much. Because the United States is a large country and various kinds of people live there. There just means the United States. You're repeating an idea. So we can put the US in the second half. Due to its large size, so because it is a large country, because it is large, due to its large size, the United States has a diverse population. Various kinds of people live there just means it has a diverse population. These two parts mean the same thing. So you don't have to put in the middle part. Questions? Number 9. My grammar class was start at 10:35. This should just be started. Started at 10:35. When the teacher was coming, this should just be came. Came to class. Was coming means the teacher is on the way to class. But the next part says she returned the quiz. So she's already here. So it should just be came to class. She returned the last quiz to my classmates and me, right? This is an object, so it should be me. After that, comma, we had another quiz. You don't need the perfect aspect. And then we can simplify this sentence. We know it's your grammar class. You're talking about the class that you are in. Why are you in somebody else's class? It's your class, so you don't have to say my. Grammar class started at 10:35. When the teacher came to class, just means arrived. She returned the last quiz. Okay, if you say the last quiz, do you mean it is the final quiz? Or do you mean it's the quiz that we just did? It's ambiguous. There are two possible meanings. So we can clarify by turning it into our last quiz. So it's not the only last quiz. It's not the last quiz. It is our last quiz. And since you say returned, you don't need to say to my classmates and me. Who else would you be returning the quiz to? And then you can combine these sentences. You don't have to say after that, right? You could just say and then. So the next thing. Finally, if you change the subject of this last part to the teacher, you can also combine it into the previous sentence because the subject in the previous sentence is the teacher. So you can say, instead of we had another quiz, you can say she gave us another quiz. And you can omit the word quiz. Another means another one, which means another quiz. Questions? Next one, number 10. If a wife has a work, I think it means a job, right? If a wife has a job or has work, her husband should share the housework with her. Okay, this should be uncountable. Housework should be one word, or not one word. It should be singular. Housework with her. If both of them help the housework again, can be finished much faster. And then we can simplify. Has work, you can use the verb works. Should share the housework with her just means should help with the house chores. Chores are daily tasks. 就家事. If both of them help just means if they work together. The housework, you keep saying the housework, you can just say it can be finished much faster. Okay? Questions? 11. Last one. Okay. The first time I went skiing, this is not the end of the sentence, comma. I was afraid to go down the hill, but then I, past tense, thought to myself, why not give it a try? You'll make it. After, you need a noun. So standing around for 10 minutes without moving. Again, after is only the first half of the sentence, comma. Finally, I decided to, you're missing a to, go down that hill. And then we can simplify. To go down the hill just means to go downhill. Downhill is a direction. Thought to myself. Who else are you thinking to? Can anyone else hear your thoughts? Of course you're thinking to yourself. So then I thought, why not give it a try? You'll make it. After standing around for 10 more minutes, it says 10 minutes without moving. And we can guess it means that the next thing this person did was just hesitate. But instead of saying without moving, standing around already means without moving. Standing around just means he's standing there or she's standing there doing nothing. So you don't have to say without moving, but you should add more minutes. This tells us that it's the next thing that this person did. Finally, I decided. We can change this to I finally decided. And the reason to do this is so we can kill off this comma. Right? If you put the finally in the middle of the sentence, you don't need to add the commas. So I finally decided to go down that hill. You already said go down the hill. You can just say do it. Okay, questions about this page? All right, so next page. Did that? 37. Okay, so these are all grammar mistakes. This is a course description, has 30, it says 30 problems. Course number 6901, World Domination, 争霸世界, 3 credits. Professor Peck, Mr. Lapham, Ms. Austin. 1 2-hour lecture period per week is required. 3 periods of field work per week are. It says 3 periods, plural. So are also required. This course on world domination and dictatorship involves, course is singular, so involves, both lectures, more than one lecture, and this should be some kind of noun. So instead of that, you say, putting into practice what students will learn. There's probably more than one student. So students will report to their faculty advisors once a month. Everyone must keep a journal of revolutions started, governments overthrown, and peasants oppressed. It's not a possessive, it's a plural. Peasants, in case you don't know, are ordinary farmers, 佃农. Readings include Karl and Groucho Marx's masterful essay, yeah, that's right. Laughing all the way to the throne. The comma should be inside the quotation mark. And Chairman Mao's autobiography, Hold the Bacon. This is sure to interest students whose, this should be WHOSE, right, belonging to them. Career plans are to be an emperor, Tsar, dictator, or reality show winner. You don't need the semicolons. You only need a semicolon in a list when one of the items includes a comma. In this list, all 4 items lack commas, so you don't need the semicolons. You can replace all 4 of these with all 3 of these with simple commas. I would also take out the un, because you can only say unemperor. You have to say Tsar. You can't say unsar. So the grammar doesn't connect. But in this kind of sentence, you don't have to count these nouns. These nouns can be abstract categories. These are the kinds of jobs. So you can turn them into uncountable nouns. That way you don't have the question. You can just take this away. Are to be emperor, Tsar, dictator, or reality show winner. By the time the course concludes, students, okay, so this is in the future, right? The course ends in the future. So students will have gathered all necessary information about what it takes to rule the world. We will be discussing topics like propaganda, media manipulation, and telegenic coronation clothes. Telegenic means you look good on TV. Coronation is the ceremony where you become a king, including crown jewel selection. I'm going to take out the hyphen. If you put in the hyphen, you're turning crown jewel into an adjective. You're describing the kind of selection. But here it's simply saying how to select crown jewels. So this should not have a hyphen, it should be 2 words. Working in the field. Okay, so the subject of working should be students. So the subject of the next part of the sentence should be students. Students will set up spy networks. And this will count as a quarter of the grade. The students, I think I'll take out the last S. It should be plural possessive. So students plus apostrophe. Task is to outmaneuver everyone in the course by becoming the first to conquer a hostile country that is required for graduation. Okay, let's separate the sentence. Semicolon, and then change that to this. This is required for graduation. This is a new sentence. It doesn't fit with the previous sentence. Exams, again, future tense, will also emphasize real practical skills, no comma, and theoretical ideas. There are only 2 ideas, 2 items, you don't need the comma. Students will write only 2 papers. The only is modifying the 2, so put the only next to the 2. Admission to this course and its sequel, this should not have an apostrophe, just ITS. And its sequel, Universal Domination, are by permission of the Department of Political Science. This should be an adjective, not an adverb. Political science. Period. The next word should simply be regardless, not irregardless, just regardless. Regardless of age or class rank, applicants should be as motivated, should be more motivated than the average freshman, and should try to visit the departmental office for an interview. Okay, how many mistakes was that? 有人在数吗？ Was that 30? How many was that?所以我们抓了几个 Okay, fine. I'll count myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, count 4. This should be count 4. So 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, exactly 30. Great. Questions about this one? All right, exercise 2. Again, 30 errors in this letter. The first error is in the address. The name of the street should be capitalized. Capital E, Elm Avenue. Dear Mr. Slaunton, thank you for sending us your novel, The Lily Droops at Dawn. This should be italicized, 应该斜体, with no quotation marks. It's the title of a long and complete work, so it should use italics, not quotations. To read means that the publisher has not read it yet. But it sounds like the publisher has finished reading it, so there should be reading. Reading over 1,000 pages about a love affair between plants is a very unique experience. Some people will say you cannot say very unique. Unique just means different from everything else. But I think it's fine. You can. It's a feeling. Like there's a difference in the distance between this thing and all the other things. You can be more or less unique in terms of the intensity of the feeling. In your talented hands, both of the plants, plural, become characters that are well-rounded and of great interest to the reader. Before Mr. Higgin, who is our founder? So this should be a subject. Who, you know, is our founder, commits to publishing this masterpiece, I must ask for some real minor changes. I guess they mean really minor changes as an adverb. Really minor changes. Most of the editors, including Mr. Higgin, were, plural, confused about the names. You are absolutely right in stating that each of the lovers is, each is a singular pronoun, each is in the Lily family, semicolon, because the first and second half are not connected otherwise. Scientifically, comma, they have similar characteristics. Calling the lovers Lila and Lyle would not have been a problem if the characters were distinguished from one another in personality, comma, habits, comma, or appearance. Unfortunately, your main characters, plural, resemble each other in petal. Okay, petal color is one item. Petal color and height. True, one of the lilies is said to be the smarter. Well, not the, right? Said to be smarter. But the reader doesn't. It's missing an apostrophe. Know which. A second problem, singular, is the love scenes. You mentioned in your cover letter that you can make them. This should just be lengthier. Mr. Higgin feels, and I agree, that you write vividly. Nevertheless, we think you could cut them. A lot is 2 words without losing the reader's attention. After all, once a person has read one flower proposal, he or she has essentially read them all. Finally, the ending needs work. When the lily droops, the book ends. If this is present tense, then this must also be present tense. Are you comfortable with the tiny change? Question mark. Market research shows that books with happy endings appeal to readers. You don't need the readers, whoever he or she may be. Him or her. These should be objects, right? Appeal to readers, the object. This is plural, so actually this should be they, them, they. Sorry, it should be subject because it's subject of the next sentence. But it's plural, so it should be whoever they may be. These volumes sell well. Instead of drooping, perhaps the lily could spread its, no apostrophe, petals and welcome the dawn, or become a rose. Higgin Publishing would like this novel for their fall list. It's a company, its fall list. No apostrophe, ITS. I hope that you are open to the changes I have outlined in this letter. I cannot help but mention that Higgin Publishing is probably the only publisher with experience in plant romance volumes, period. I look forward to talking with you about the editing process. Sincerely, Cynthia Higgin. And I would add a that here. We think that you could. Okay, I don't want to count. Let's say that's 30. Questions? All right, next page. Newspaper article, another 30. Correct every mistake. This is an interesting point. If you quote somebody else and they make a mistake, you should not change the mistake. But for this exercise, just change every mistake. Hold the tights, capital A. First word of the subtitle, capital letters. Former television star plays Shakespeare. Silver, the actor that played a talking horse on the Emmy-winning series Mr. Said, is now starring in the Royal Theatre production of Hamlet. Again, this should be italicized. 斜体, no quotation marks. The handsome blonde recently agreed to discuss his approach to acting. It was never about talking. In Silver's view, this should be apostrophe S. As he had munched on oats and sipped delicately from a water pail. The colt explained, oh, okay, so we're talking about a horse. The actor is a horse. The colt means young male horse, explained that he learned to talk at the age of 1. His talking was, sorry, not his, just talking. Talking was not fulfilling enough, semicolon. Only acting met his need for recognition. I started by reciting monologues for whomever would listen, he said. This should be who, whoever. It's the subject of this sentence, right? Listen is the verb. So whoever would listen, he said. Then one day, one day, I got a call from a Hollywood agent offering me the part of Mr. Said. Tossing his mane in the air, Silver continued, I played, past tense, that role. Oh, okay. There's a missing quotation mark here. I played that role for 9 seasons. You get typecast. Nobody wanted to take, wants. This should be present tense. This is present tense, so this is present tense. Nobody wants to take a chance on your dramatic ability if they can find someone else for the role. He added, sitting by the phone one day, it rang. No, as I was sitting by the phone one day, it rang, and my agent told me that I had an audition. That audition resulted in him getting the part. Silver is the only horse that has ever played Hamlet as far as he knows. The actor has already, one word, begun, because has, right? Has begun rehearsals. His costume includes a traditional, adjective, not adverb, a traditional velvet coat, but no tights. Between me and you, not you and I, between me and you, he whispered, the tights snag on my fur. Director Ed Walkaters asked Silver to consider shaving, and he also tried several types of material for the tights. Even Silver's wife got involved in this key costuming decision. Okay, I think this should be Silver. He is not the director, he is the horse. And Silver also tried. No one tried harder than she, his wife, to find tights I could wear, Silver said. Nothing was suitable for this, again, extremely unique. I would take out the extreme. The author would take out the extremely, but I think it's fine. Silver is equally as involved with the role itself. I relate to Hamlet's problems, he explained. We horses often find it hard to take action and be decisive, right? Take action, be decisive. The role is also exhausting. Silver lies down for a quick nap every day before going on stage as Hamlet. Questions? All right, next page. Again, 30 mistakes. Installing your, this should be mine and yours, so Y-O-U-R, your new widget wheel. To install the widget wheel, a computer should first, the computer. If you're installing it into a computer, you already have a computer. It is the only computer you're talking about. The computer should first be turned off, period, capital T, then, comma, follow these simple steps. Important. If you have an A4019 or a newer model, please discard this manual. Discard means throw away. You must send for manual number 218B. To send for, 索取. 218, it means request. No comma here. 218B or, comma, in the case of a computer that previously had a widget for manual number 330B. Since your computer is not covered in this manual, discard it. Faulty directions have been responsible for explosions and software crashes. 1. Unpack the widget wheel, comma, which looks like a shark's tooth, apostrophe, shark apostrophe S. There is only one widget. It's always been singular, so this is extra information. You should add the comma. 2. Unpack the two disc poles. Grasp the disc pole that is more circular. Huh. Okay. Is there something that is more or less circular? 比较圆的那个. I guess yes, right? Okay. Line up the teeth with the teeth on the widget. Note, the teeth should be brushed, a lot is 2 words, with a widget brush, capital S. See the enclosed order form for more information. 3. After the teeth are tightly clenched, you, a person, why a person? You should insert the widget disk into slot C. However, if the widget disk has a blue strip, take out in which case? Just simply, it should be inserted into slot D. Don't mix up the slots as the computer will catch fire. Neither of these slots neither is singular, not one, not the other, singular, is open, or I guess should be open when the computer is standing upright. Set the computer, S-E-T, set the computer on its side before beginning this step. 4. Turn on the computer. If the screen is blank, comma, call a service specialist. I'm sure there's more than one person at this number. If the screen blinks rapidly from red to green or from blue to yellow in model 2W4T, run farther away. Oh, further is fine. Run further from the screen. Run away. I would just say run away from the screen. This means that the widget was installed improperly and the computer is altogether unusable. Altogether means completely. 5. You are almost ready to enjoy your new widget. 2 exclamation marks. Very exciting. Place a hand on the mouse that is not wearing any rings, including wedding rings. I guess place your hand, right? Place your hand. Depending upon the model number, either press firmly, okay, press either firmly or softly. Some widgets, I'm going to say will work. Sorry, can work well. Can work well no matter, you don't need the what, no matter the pressure. Yeah, this is just nonsense, but you can still check for grammar. Questions? All right, next page. 30 mistakes. Let's see, September should be capitalized. Not sure why. Okay, probably hackers. I think it's missing an S. Hackers Wallpaper Factory. This morning, comma, Jenna Pamek and I met with Oscar Hacker, president of Hacker Wallpaper. We presented our bid to renovate his wallpaper factory, which has been located on the corner of 71st Street and Alexander, which is located. The 2 of us, who Mr. Walker praised, you don't need will have, praised for our work on the paste factory, sat down. In this case, they really do sit down. Sat down to try to go over the financial aspects of the project. Although math is one subject. I know it ends with an S, but it is singular. Mathematics was hard for me when I took it in college. I explained the numbers really well. When I left, I was convinced that Mr. Hacker would give the job to this fine company of ours, no apostrophe. No matter what Jenna will say, or I guess said, no matter what Jenna said, I'm not sure. Maybe says, maybe present tense. Yeah, she already said it. Okay. No matter what Jenna said, everyone is singular, was satisfied with their gift basket. It is totally a lie and not true at all that one of the gift baskets one of them was filled with money. Mr. Hacker objects to my bribing him. The object of to is bribing. You only can have one object, so this is a adjective. My bribing him. Jenna was just upset. No semicolon, take this out. Because she had to listen to Mr. Hacker explain that a square had 4 sides, and the square in our design has 5. You should have studied geometry. Exclamation mark inside the quotation, Mr. Hacker exclaimed. Jenna, who, because is the subject of is, everyone thinks is close friends with Mrs. Hacker, was very wrong when she said that I stapled her hair to the table. Again, you can't say very wrong unless you're talking about something that feels wrong. This is a statement of fact that is not correct, so you can't say very wrong. Was just wrong. After pulling out the staple, the table was damaged and will need repairs. Either Mr. Hacker or one of his assistants. Either is the choice between 2 singular options. So this should be singular. Is willing to testify that I never touched the stapler. Mr. Hacker awarded the contract to our competitor because our bid was too high and for no other. Because A, our bid was too high, and B, for no other reason. I think that's okay. Questions? All right, last one. PowerPoint slides. So they have to be grammatically correct and parallel and consistent. Okay, number 1, marketing potential. If these are capitalized, then potential should also be capitalized. The target buyer, okay, is works for number 1 and number 3, but number 2 starts with has. So let's put the is in the options. So the target buyer, colon, first one, is lowercase, 21 to 92 years old. Second one, has 2 piercings already in other body parts. Third one, lowercase is concerned about their appearance and what they look like. Number 2, specifications. Each one looks like a complete sentence, so let's begin with a capital letter. They don't, missing an apostrophe, pinch the elbow's skin. These are complete sentences, so let's add a period. Manufacturing cost, this should be plural. Costs are minimal. I don't think we need to know who specified. So let's say uses allergy-free metal, and this should have a hyphen. Allergy-free is one word. It's an adjective that means free of allergies. So capital U, uses allergy-free metal, and we're all talking about rings, so you don't have to say the rings. Some are made of plastic. Well, hold on. This one should be it uses allergy-free metal. Number 3, and should be lowercase. You don't need include the following. That's implied in the fact that it's a title. Themes and holiday promotions. Let's start with a capital letter for each one. The first slide we started with a lowercase because you're completing this sentence, but the rest of these are not completing anything. So let's start with a capital letter. Capital G, greased rings for Labor Day. Day should be capitalized. 劳工节, Labor Day. in honor of the elbow grease a person uses when this should be a person. So let's just take this out. When working. Second one, capital B. Back to school rings. Back -to school. It's one word adjective. Back to school rings that look, this is plural, right? So look like rings and binders. No period because these are not complete sentences. Third one, telephone rings with, again, two words, a lot of ringtones. Purchased separately. For capital E, engagement rings decorated with wedding bells. We can take out laying. We don't need the verb. Over already gives us the position. Over clasped hands. Number 4, last one. Marketing challenges will have been. Again, you can just call this marketing challenges, capital C. And then you have complete sentences. Long-sleeved shirts cover the rings. This should have a hyphen. Long-sleeved, 长袖的. One word adjective. Long-sleeved shirts cover the rings. When catching on cloth, antiseptic that kills germs must be applied. What does that mean? Okay, whatever. We can turn this into a parallel structure. Something, a thing, does a verb. So the thing is here. Antiseptic that kills germs must be applied when catching on, when it, or the rings, so when they catch on cloth. And remember to begin with a capital A. The third one, you only have 2 elbows. You can't sell more than 2 rings per person. Okay, so again, following the structure of a thing plus a verb. So no more, again, capital N, no more than 2 rings per person can be sold, period. Questions? All right, we have finished the entire handout. And so next week, please come for the final exam. If you have questions, we have 2 more minutes. Otherwise, see you next week and good luck.